everybody, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Zee Garcia. Hello.
I'm Mike DiLisio.
All right, well, hey.
That's Roy Kennedy right over there.
Right. Trying to make some sense out of all of this gobbledygook happening behind the scenes.
It's
Okay.
a crazy world, see?
Hey, everybody, this is our top 10 games that are great for the classroom.
Great for...
Let's go back and do some talk back on this a little bit here. All of us were teachers at one point. I know you're always a teacher, whatever. Mike was a...
I was a social studies teacher for just under 20 years.
Okay. Well, we can't...
You're next. Okay? No, I'm not after that. You go.
I was a math teacher for 35. No, I taught mostly high school math. I taught that for about a decade, and then a few years of other middle school subjects.
That's a good point. I was high school. I
taught English as a second language for another 3 years.
I taught theater. But I actually also practiced theater, okay? These guys just taught. And those who can't do, taught.
That's right.
So, obviously not English.
No.
But anyhow.
No, definitely not English.
So, there's a misnomer all the time with educational board games, and it's there. It exists for a reason that educational games are terrible.
Right.
And that's because for many years, and still now, there's a lot of them that are. I was at a convention, walked up and down the aisles, saw many booths with educational board games, and they're putrid.
Yes.
They're educational, maybe, but they're not fun.
Yeah.
Correct. They forget the game part of that equation, yes.
Right. Yeah, and when I was choosing this list, I was making sure that there were games that I would recommend as a game, but they also have a nice educational element. The other thing I did, I don't know how you guys kind of structured it, I just put broad subject matters that I think that these games, they're probably obvious, but I'm going to just say, and I also went across the spectrum, like most of these I think are probably better suited for high school, maybe middle school, but there's a couple of games in here that I think would work well for elementary, and I'll try to point that out.
Ranking this list was hard.
Yes.
I tried more sort of, I don't know. It's some I put higher on the list because I think the thing they teach is more outside the box. Some I put higher on the list because they have the opportunity for more jumping on points to teach.
Yeah.
Some of the higher ones are single subject sort of ideas or specific events. It's not a great, there isn't a structure here that I can point to and say this is infallible. It's not that.
I also do want to say that I very rarely used board games in the classroom.
So did I, and I taught theater.
Yeah. I very rarely did it. There's some practical reasons why it's challenging.
Sure.
Because you usually need multiple copies of board games to be able to work in a classroom.
Or you have to modify something.
You have to modify it, and they get, heavily used. So, yeah.
I use them a lot.
Did you?
But anyhow, for me, I tried to cover a bunch of topics. I missed one major thing for myself, which was art. I don't have an art game on my list.
I gotcha.
You did?
I got several.
All right, well, there you go. So we're covering the gamut, and the ranking I picked them from I thought best, the least interesting to the most interesting, but your mileage may vary. I've also done a video on this channel about how to use games in the classroom.
Yeah.
So there's that too. But let's get started and see what we have. Class is in session.
That's right. Take your seats, please.
Quiet down, Billy.
Who's Billy? Let Billy express himself.
You were a terrible teacher.
My number 10 is on the furthest back here, the 10th choice, because I feel like it's maybe a bit of a stretch.
Okay.
I put this as something that I would consider to be good for a math class or something where you are talking about logic or reasoning. It's a game that I don't particularly like because it hurts my head in that way, and that is the Shipwreck Arcana. So
interesting
the reason why
this is a logic one.
Yeah, the reason why I bounced off this game is because it makes my head hurt, and I don't think this way, and so that was what made me think, maybe this would be a good way to help you kind of build that type of deductive reasoning, logical thinking, numerical, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I thought this would be an interesting one.
This would work well for a large class setting too, because you
Absolutely.
would just show them the things, and as a
Right.
class, let's work it out.
That's exactly right. So it's
This is
it's
a
kind of
good
a
one.
logic puzzle, mathematical, numerical kind of reasoning and thinking.
Huh.
So yeah, and the funny thing is the reason why I got on my list was because, like I said, is because it made me feel stupid.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
'cause I was
it
like,
did,
man,
it did.
my brain does not work like this, but I shouldn't use that as an excuse, right? It could get better. If I
Well.
did this type of activity more, I could get better. Garcia,
You may
you're going
move-
to the back of the class.
I'll
You're
tell
going
you
to the
this.
principal's office.
I'll tell you this. I think your number 10, you've already explained and justified it and made it sound like more of an educational game than my 10 through 1.
Oh, okay. Well,
So we'll
I'll
see.
take it. I'll take
We'll
it.
see.
When did this front of the class, back of the class? My bad students sit front row.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You usually knew first day which ones didn't want to be there because they would not only pick the back seat, they would move it to the corner of the room and they'd be like removed from everybody. So, yes.
All right, all you.
Oh, no. All right, my number 10 is very much a specific historical event. And the game is Black Orchestra. And Black Orchestra is about the Second World War.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about specifically the Third Reich and Hitler and the people around that. This one, I think, is a good one to specifically pinpoint events and persons involved in that sphere and explore further into those things. The game uses, obviously, real people from history, and then the cards have real pictures.
Yes.
So it's not illustrations, it's real pictures and real events that they mention. So I thought that would be an interesting, again, this is hard to adjust to a classroom with 30 kids.
Right.
But I thought that'd be an interesting jumping on point to discuss this event in World War II as opposed to broad strokes. And this is a good sort of way into it, and the timeline of the game shows you the entire, expanse of the war, the time anyway of it, and then the rising and falling action of all of those events. So yeah, this one's a more serious topic.
Sure.
So it's tricky to play a game with a serious topic like this and to sort of make it into a classroom brouhaha, but I think this one works. I do have one more that is basically a similar idea. I think you'll have it too. I don't know if you'll have the one I'm thinking of, but yeah, this is a good one to talk about these themes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, if it's what I'm thinking of, we may have a crossover.
I think that may be a four-way crossover.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right.
Four-way crossover.
This is a good. We have
Oh,
a
the people
people's
voted
choice,
on this choice.
Oh, okay.
This is a good choice.
All right, my number 10 is what's the most important subject in school?
Theater.
Actually, it's math, but we're talking about reading. So reading is important.
fundamental.
This is bring your own book. I like this one a lot. So this is a game in which you bring your own book, literally. I guess you could bring a comic book if you wanted to or whatever.
Right.
And then the game is about finding stuff in that book as fast as you can, or looking for this, or flipping through.
That's
like an
great.
excuse for being late. I need to read a passage in my book that's a good excuse for being late. Or what's the name of a party game? So you got to find something. A rejected book title, Harry Potter and the blank. And you got to look through your book and find something that works. You can bring any book you want. I play this with my kids. I have a big fat book. Theirs is bigger because my kids read.
Right.
But just you can have a little book, a big book, comic. I guess a comic book would work. I don't know. But I like this concept a lot.
It's a neat idea, yeah.
Because it's one of those games where you're trying to answer, fill in the blank, whatever, but you have to use what's in your book, which means you have to have some kind of grasp with your book.
Yes, okay, right.
You could play this in any class, actually, because you could be like, let's play this with our science books. All the kids are flipping around. It'll be hilarious, but they're reading.
That's true.
Technically.
Yeah,
Not
you can
technically.
make mitochondria is a good choice for any one of those anyway. You know?
Harry Potter.
And the mitochondria.
All right, anyway, this one, I like it a lot. So bring your own book.
It's an interesting, wasn't familiar with that one. All right, my number 9 is a game that I think would work well in a large group setting, and so that's something that I think helps for these types of games. And this is going to be for language. I would say probably middle school to high school, or junior high where I grew up. It was junior high where I grew up. This is
When you grew up,
When I
you should
grew
say.
up, yes. When we had our stone tablets that we would etch into.
It's middle school now, right?
I think it's middle school generally
middle
now.
school.
Yeah, there are some places that still call it junior high, but
It's
there's
all-
also intermediate schools now. I don't know. I can't keep up. My number 9 is Codenames.
Old man DiLisio.
Because I think Codenames is a way to it's good for vocabulary, for kind of building vocabulary, and also for thinking of words kind of outside of the box, kind of language skills, being able to think. Use language in a more broad strokes, and maybe being more exact with your use of language and things along those lines. So, you seem dubious.
I mean, maybe I'm thinking of what usage I would give it. Maybe if I was going to pick this game, which I didn't.
Yeah.
The main usage I can think of is maybe as particularly late stage English as a second language,
I could see that, but
where you are now thinking or attempting to think
Right.
in a second language by removing the sort of leap from
Right.
chair, I have to go to my other language, and so and then that doesn't have the same associations.
Right.
So you're trying to specifically make associations
Right.
in English, but again, English is a
Clearly,
second
you
language.
thought about that. Good choice.
I did. No, so I hadn't convinced you with this. Outside of maybe that scenario you brought up. How about this? How about if I throw this at you? I don't suggest that you homebrew your own copies of games, but if you took the system from Codenames and you made your own cards for something that was more suited to whatever unit you're working on.
Sure, yeah.
Then,
And I 100% say it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
Go buy a copy of
buy the
Codenames
game,
and
yeah.
make your own cards.
and then
There's
make your
nothing
own
wrong
card.
with that.
Right. I think that would be really interesting. Like if you were doing a unit on a particular thing, trying to find connections between those.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Okay.
So, yeah.
No, that's interesting. I like that as a system.
Yeah.
With cards that tie to whatever you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, I do like that.
All right.
Or just get Codenames pictures is better.
There's that too. Well, you can count that. Whatever.
My number 9 is a poetry writing game, actually.
What?
A very little known game, I think.
There's a lot of poetry writing games.
Poetry
though.
writing game, you say?
It's a poetry writing game, so again, obviously it's for language, it's
I was going to try to rhyme, but I
for
couldn't.
creativity. This is a game called Cyrano, I should say.
Oh, my goodness.
Cyrano is from
Repos.
Yeah.
Repo Productions. And in this one, you are presented with a theme upon which to write a little jingle there, and then a rhyming couplet, and you will write out a little verse. Obviously, I think you might be looking at French cards, but anyway, the box has like 4 languages in it, and so you write this out. It's about love. I don't know, forbidden love, or it's about being late, or it's about whatever you want. Like
Right.
you write, they give you a theme,
Okay.
a little topic, and then the 2 rhyming ends of. So you write this out, and then you can have everybody read them out loud, ignoring obviously at that point, if you're using it for a classroom, the scoring and the running up the ladder while the damsel is running down the sort of like this sheet rope thing that she's got. That's the actual scoring in the game, but you can ignore all that and just write rhymes, read them out loud, have a fun time with that, and it makes everybody start thinking about the rhymes themselves, but also the cadence of a verse and the length, whatever. You can do it in iambic pentameter if you want to.
Wait, what now?
We're gonna practice Shakespeare now.
Iambic pentameter.
Iambic pentameter.
Man, you're going to put your foot in your mouth.
once
on
was
that.
a
I
man.
know. I said
That's a foot joke.
I am big pentameter. Not I.
Once was a man from Kentucky.
No.
No?
No.
No? All right.
We'll go to a haiku. Don't ever say that again. That was a haiku.
That was okay.
My number 9. Drop it!
Drop it.
Oh, that's your choice. Okay. Stop it,
it.
drop it, and roll. That's another school thing.
Drop
Yeah.
It is about geometry. Woo! So in Drop It, it's a very simple
Geometry.
game. Yes. You're taking these different shapes and dropping them in. You don't want your shapes to touch the same color, and you don't want them to touch the same shape. So you can see that red square in this picture is breaking all the rules.
Touching
that's a square.
Yeah, there's a triangle below.
I know, I was joking.
Oh.
This is supposed to be about geometry.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Where's the rhombus?
Anyhow, you get points then for the ones that don't do that, depending on how high they go. Very simple game. This works really well, especially younger kids learning about. It's not just shapes, obviously. It's logic. I'll drop this here. It's also gravity, so it's a little bit of science.
9.8. This triangle is going to drop at 9.8 meters per second squared if it was in a vacuum.
This one works really well. It's actually, if you look in
That's gravity.
Terminal velocity?
That's 3.
I hate them both. If you, when I'm talking,
That's right.
this is what I see you doing.
I'm not chewing gum.
This is what I want. Anyhow, I've seen this game in catalogs for like math supplies and stuff. This one actually has made it in now. It works really well.
I could see that.
Speaking of that, we've talked about this before. This is a little teacher side note here since we're doing this. You will never find a worse group of people at a meeting than teachers. They are the worst audience in the world.
The worst.
They do
and I'm
not.
one of them, so I know this is true.
It's very true. Like, you go to a teacher's meeting, nobody's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Go watch me doing a live thing about how to use board games in the classroom. It's on our channel, and you'll see that when I am starting to finish, everyone's packing up and leaving.
100%.
And there's also all these noises and stuff the whole time because they're teachers.
That's right.
They get it.
All right, my number 8 is for littler ones. This is probably for, this is definitely for elementary school. And this would be for science broadly, but more narrow would be something like oceanography or conservation or things along those lines. My number 8 is a game called Ocean Crisis, which is a cooperative game.
What a good choice!
Yeah, this is from Shepherd Kip, which I believe is a Korean publisher.
They are not.
They're not?
They're not Korean. I don't remember
I'm
what
sorry,
they are.
Taiwanese maybe.
Yes, I think so.
But anyway, just a really, really cool cooperative game where you are trying to basically preserve the ocean and save the animals in the ocean by kind of clearing out the waste. And it's obviously an adorable looking game, but not only cooperative games are good for younger kids just in general, teaching them how to kind of cooperate and think together and creative problem solving. But this also does a really good job of reinforcing how we can take care of our oceans and protect the animals and how we can impact that by throwing our trash in the wrong place and things like that. So just
You're
a
right.
really
This
cute
is a
game.
really good one.
And it's fun. I mean, fun first, but it also teaches. So
I agree. If a game's not fun, I don't care how educational
Yeah.
it
I
is.
agree. Yeah, that's
It's
why you got to
out.
pick a fun game first.
yeah. So my number 8 is Ocean Crisis, an adorable game.
All right, my number 8 is Concept. Concept is, of course, about
Like it.
Yeah. It's a
You guys are
Thinking-
picking good games for once.
thinking outside the box and also just breaking down an idea into its cohesive parts and building that back up, especially if and you can sort of adjust this to however advanced you want it to be. It can just be you describing a fish and you can go water, blue, and maybe an animal and
Why
whatever.
didn't I think of this game, Z? That's a good. This is a
But
good
then
one.
if you're describing
10 slots.
something a little more advanced,
Yeah.
like an emotion, you can pick emotions, or you can pick locations in the world. I mean, you can go anywhere with that.
Yeah.
And then have a classroom guess on something, or have a student come up and try, or teams, whatever. So yeah, it's almost a toolbox, isn't it? I mean, the
Yes.
game is basically a toolbox for expressing yourself in a way that is outside the norm, outside the box. And I think the creativity there comes from both sides, not
Yeah.
just what somebody is using, not just what someone's creating on the board, but how you use this thing in your classroom.
Right.
Things I can't even think of.
Yeah.
So yeah, Concept, number 8.
They say that 117% of communication is nonverbal, and this really helps do that. Build that up.
Yeah.
You didn't teach
I
math.
wouldn't
Don't worry
use
about
it in a math setting. That's not the classroom for that.
All right, my number 8 is our first crossover, actually. And it's with Mike, and not Zee, because he said it wasn't on his list, and that's Codenames.
Oh, okay.
I really think
No.
so. Codenames is on my list because it works in a group setting
does,
for
very well.
sure.
Very well.
You can put these up on your projector. I'm kidding. We don't use projectors anymore. On your electronic whiteboard, and you can put up a whole
That's a
pile
thing?
of cards.
An electronic whiteboard?
Yeah, they're really cool.
Smartboard, they're called.
Yeah, smart boards. You can write on them, press a button, and it deletes it. Or even more importantly, you put up all the notes. You go to the next screen, and one kid's like, "Oh, I missed that." You're like, "Hang on," and you go back, and it's all there again. I really like them. Also, as a math teacher, you can put a circle up there, and the kids don't go, "That's a circle."
Right.
It's fantastic. For maps, he has a million maps. If you don't have a smart board, push your principal to get one. They are worth every penny.
Yeah, when I first started teaching, we still had actual chalkboards with dust-free chalk. What a lie!
Yeah, that's the truth of it. All right, anyway, so you put this up on your smart board or your projector, whatever. If
Yeah.
you're still using projectors, I'm sorry. Whatever it is. And it's great because you can have the whole class working together, and there's different styles. Like Mike said, you can put up any words you want.
Yeah.
You can put up the things there's also various versions you can buy. Now, some of them are Disney and Marvel, but there is pictures, like Zee scooped me on saying.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a good idea.
Yeah.
So that's what I would recommend. Or even, you could even play with Disney. It's something kids know, but
Sure.
it still is making them think and put things together.
Right.
So, Codenames.
All right.
All right, my number 7 is another one that I think works well for language. This is probably also somewhat younger, but I guess you can tailor this. This is paperback. This is deck building, making words.
I have a hard time with this game, and I'm a
Yeah.
man.
So maybe
you
you-
remove the cards that are like wild and stuff, though.
Yeah, well, you can tailor this for
Yeah,
sure.
you have to, right?
Yeah, you would probably have to tailor this. But this is, again, another one that I think is good for language. You know,
Yeah.
just kind
Yes,
of building
absolutely.
words and
Spelling.
spelling is
General
it's
spelling.
And
definitely
decision
good.
making, because there's
And-
more than just the word.
100%. So, you know, we did a Foursquare review of Scrabble not too long ago. And, you know, other modern games that kind of do that maybe a little bit better, in my opinion. This is one I mentioned. And so I think that this is a game that is fun. There is plenty of game there, but it also has a very strong underpinning, a foundation of language arts, you know, which is really what I would use this game for in a language arts classroom. And so this is one of the first ones that came to me. It's a little further on the list because, like you said, you know, it would be hard in a big group setting and things
for
along
a
those lines.
small high school, I would say high school
Yeah,
at
maybe
least,
so.
right?
For homeschooling, a lot of these games are used for
Homeschooling,
homeschooling.
yeah, absolutely, but also like just a focused group,
Right.
like few.
I might use
you know.
this for like an after school club for an arts club, an English arts club, or
Yeah.
you know, or a spelling club or whatever, something along those lines. Or
That'd be good
Yeah.
for like the kids in the spelling bee group
yeah,
or
that
whatever.
kind of a thing.
Yeah, something like that. All right, Mike. Well, I see your paperback, and I raise you.
This is hardback. It'd be hilarious.
That would be great.
Word on the Street.
Ah.
Word on the Street is, I think, a lot more malleable.
Okay.
I think it will age up and age down a little easier, where
right.
you'd have to sort of tear apart the deck and paperback.
Yeah.
You can also then pick a theme in this one if you wanted to.
Sure.
This is the game in which you say a word, and for every letter that shows up in that word, you pull that letter towards your side, trying to lock it on your side. And your opponent, of course, will then try to include that letter and pull it back towards the center. But you could do this as early as elementary classes, you know, and then their words are not going to be tremendous.
Yeah.
But that's the idea. They are, you know, growing their vocabulary. You can level it up. And then you can also pick a theme, like I said. It could be like today we're talking about the Second World War. We'll go back to the Black Orchestra thing. So you have to pick a word that you think you can relate to that, and if we call you on it, you got to justify it.
Right.
You know, if you pick something that we don't think flies, we want you to justify that. That brings up debate. You know, if they do get called on a word, how do you relate that word to that? A little humor in there, probably. This is a good one, I think. And the game gets out of your way in this one.
Yes.
So that you can learn.
I've not played
bit.
this one, so I wasn't even familiar with it, but it
That's
seems like a good
one.
choice.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
There's also, I don't know if it's still made, there was Word on the Street Junior,
Okay.
which had vowels. Word on the Street does not have vowels.
Right,
It's
all
just
the vowels are
consonants.
ignored.
Got it. Okay, interesting.
Yep, that's my number 7.
All right, my number 7 is I need, when I taught math, from geometry, logic, I always had abstract strategy day, and everyone pulled out abstract strategy games, and we played all kinds of games.
Sure.
Tons of them. Number 1 game, Onitama.
Wow.
Straight up. Okay? I know I put Onitama on a lot of lists. This is my go-to, but it works really well. When I was at a homeschool convention showing off games, this was the second most looked at game. There's another one that's not on my list, but it's on the People's Choice list, but that was
okay.
higher. But this one just works really well. Chess is already being taught in schools. I think chess
Sure.
is great. I would prefer to teach this because it's faster, simpler, and it makes kids think a little bit more on their feet. You can't go home and study this one,
Right.
per se. You don't know what 5 cards you're going to get. It's a little back and forth game. I love Onitama. So, great game. I would have to get like multiple copies, but it's not expensive either.
Sure, right.
But I would play like three games at the same time.
Sure.
Have the kids who aren't playing watch because you're about to be in a game.
Yeah.
You know, they go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, Onitama.
Interesting.
All right, my number 6 would be for a science class, and I think this is probably middle school to high school, probably high school. And this is a relatively recent cooperative game that is built around, I already talked about ocean conservation and the impact upon sea life. This is about animal conservation and whole and endangered animals. This is called Endangered. So I think that this would be, this is one that is not going to be, this is an education forward, but I think that everything behind this is about the idea of the habitats, the things that can happen to the habitats of these different animals. And I also like that they talk about it on a much broader scale, right? It's not just how do we kind of protect animals and keep their habitats as undamaged from our intervention as possible, but it also talks about the world economics behind this and how you have to, there's a political aspect and an economic aspect, and you've got, ambassadors from different countries that you have to kind of convince, and you have to, maybe you have to use money for lobbying these people. And that's not something that you necessarily would know, unless you were, interested in this topic and learning more about it. And so I do like that they do more than just say, hey, save the animals. It goes a little broader than that. It talks about, hey, again, it's much more of a global scale, and I appreciate that approach to this. It's not a micro, it's a macro view of animal conservation. So, and the more that it comes out with, there's more and more animals they talk about. And it also reinforces the fact that there's a number of animals that, at various times have been in some trouble.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, this is a good one. And again, like you said, very macro. Lots of jumping on points there to other discussion topics.
Right.
To group projects, to whatever. Yeah. Interesting.
Yep.
All right, my number 6 is my the most abstract of all of these, and by that I mean the most from which you have to extrapolate that you are in fact doing some didactic learning. And this is a game called Zendo. Zendo is a logic game in many ways, not really a deduction game. It's an induction game, right? Ha ha. People love to say that online when anybody says Zendo's a deduction game, because it's not. And I get that you are trying to sort of understand the rule for something from seeing examples that follow said rule and examples that do not, and again extrapolate from that what that rule would be. But it's just that thinking outside the box, the adaptability of something like this, the interest of something like this, the fact that you can learn this game with these pieces and then play this game with anything.
Right.
That's interesting, and that requires that sort of advanced problem solving, or just sort of, connection building, that pattern recognition in not necessarily just little plastic pyramids, but something as broad as like the world or animal conservation or whatever. So again, very abstracted idea here that I'm pitching, but I do think this opens the door to that idea, of seeing a messy picture and finding patterns and form in there.
Cool.
You like that?
Love everything you're saying right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, no, I
you
think
love-
this is a really good choice. This is like, I think does similar things to the Shipwreck Arcana, where you're forcing your brain to think in ways it doesn't typically think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, Shipwreck Arcana is a good solid pick because it's about math.
Right.
Like this is math,
Sure.
logical math.
Right.
This isn't that concrete, but
You can also
You can get there.
take this game and find. It doesn't have to be the shapes. You can even take things.
Right.
I mean, this has been a public domain.
we're
game.
listening.
yeah.
It's
No,
all
no, no.
good.
I'm saying.
No, you weren't listening.
No. Okay, never mind.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes.
No.
Kenny!
We're about to get a copyright strike from Kenny.
My number 6 is a crossover, but it hasn't happened yet. So, but I know it's a crossover for sure.
Okay.
This is the
go.
most serious game on my list because of the topic matter, but I think it's an important game, and that's Freedom: The Underground Railroad. This is I'm going to talk briefly because we'll come up again later. If not by these guys, it's a ton of people's choice, just as a heads up. This is a cooperative game, which I think is the only possible way this game could exist.
Only way.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Only
So
way.
you are helping slaves escape, and tough choices have to be made over the game. The game is seeped with history. Now, when it comes to historical games, we could do
Oh, sure.
lists upon lists of games
Yeah.
that teach history. Okay, so there's a gazillion of them. I just think this is a good one because of the cooperative nature. Like, no one has to be the bad guys, and that's what you said about the other one.
Black Orchestra.
Black Orchestra.
yeah.
But also,
Well, because there's going to be fewer games that tackle this subject historically accurately, right?
Yes.
And respectfully.
Yes.
yeah.
You can learn a game about, Napoleon. There's going to be games about Napoleon.
Sure.
And it's not as important if the game leans towards educational,
Right.
silly, fun, whatever.
Yeah.
This is more important that the game get it right. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's going to be fewer about this
Right.
abolitionist movement. Yeah.
So that's my number 6. I'm sure it'll come up later. Freedom on the Underground
I
Railroad.
may have more to say.
Aim is.
All right. My number 5,
Yeah.
this is a tough one,
Okay.
honestly, because this is a complex game. This would have to be probably for an advanced level science class in high school. Okay? This is.
Okay.
I've had a number of games on here, honestly, I'm noticing about
Petrichor.
conservation. No, although that's an interesting choice, but it's not really educational, it's just a neat theme.
Is it a Genius game?
It is not. This is much more complex than a Genius game. I'm going to put it right out there. This is a Vital Lacerda game. CO2.
Oh!
Again.
Warning!
This is for. I would
If you're
say that
watching.
this would be like for an AP science class, right? This is
Okay,
like
now it's just paralysis of science.
yes,
Yeah.
advanced placement. So this is again. I like this one because again, this is a macro level view at this topic where you are having to there's economic elements to it. There are political elements to it. There are scientific elements to it. And it's obviously a very good game. Now, I would say that calling any Lacerda game on the lighter end is I know, ridiculous, but this is not his heaviest game by any means. I do think that you would have to really tailor this to, and I understand.
It is the heaviest game on this game is a 30 though, for
of
sure.
course. Oh, by far.
Well, Z is like 4 hour heavier.
But yeah, no, I mean, I do think that this is a game that does very good at teaching while still being game first, right? I mean, but again, this really covers so many different things about, again, having to lobby and having to propose your projects and having to get approval for these projects, and then having to make sure you can afford these, and then having kind of, you have your own interest at heart, right? Because you're playing as a particular country, but you sometimes have to cooperate with other people that have their own interests, and you have to find that balance there. And so there's some very interesting high-level ideas here that if you had the right, group of kids, maybe again in an AP class or an after-school thing that were really into this science, it could work. I know it's a bit of a stretch.
I haven't played it, so I can't really comment on
Yeah.
this. and I never will be able to because I don't intend on playing it ever.
Yeah. All right. Well, I like it.
Well, there goes your AP science dreams.
I know. AP Science was actually pretty rough for me, which is weird because I think I'm pretty good. Math knocked that out.
You took an AP class?
Yeah, I had a couple. Wow. What's wrong with you, man?
I'm very
You know that
impressed.
stands for advanced placement, right? That's not. That's not like that's not lunch class.
Oh. All right, my number 5 is one I would definitely recommend for the actual thing I taught, like a theater class, or an improv session, or anything like that. That style of thing. It's one that Tom likes very much. But wait, there's more. More.
Got it. That's the game. Okay.
That's the game. Yes. But wait, there's more is very much one of those. Keep talking, make up things, pitch a thing in this case. Be thrown a curveball and adapt to that curveball. Keep talking. I think of all those games, which I don't really love that style of game, actually. Between this one and Snake Oil and the one with the machine, you make a machine.
Yeah, the big invention or the
Big idea.
Yeah,
The big idea. Of all of those, I prefer this one. And they're all kind of the same concept, right? But yes, the adapting halfway because somebody goes, wait, but what about if your product, what if I wanted to do this? Boom, and they throw you a thing. And you got to think on your feet, keep it going, change it up, sell it to them. If that very narrow target is what you're hoping to hit, I think this one hits it the best. So yes, you can't really take this and adapt it to a math class or a geography class, but English maybe, and definitely something artistic or creative, you know. So yeah, but wait, there's more. My number 5.
Interesting.
All right, my number 5. Let's go to science games here. And okay, look, the fact is, 10 years ago, this would have been a tough list if you had said, name some science game. I'm like, there's some, I promise.
Yeah.
But Genius Games alone is turning this around. I can't fill my list with Genius Games, so if I didn't put the one that you wanted, imagine it's here. But I'm going to put something that I like. So my number 5 is Subatomic, the atom building game.
Genotype, that's a good pick. You said to imagine it was the one I wanted.
Oh, sure. All right. Subatomic is a deck building game where you're building atoms using neutrons and protons and other stuff.
Electrons, sir. You're an animal.
My mind went blank for a brief moment.
Wow.
I haven't played Subatomic in a while.
There's some quarks in there, probably.
It also has famous people, scientists were involved. It's a simple game. It's one of the simplest ones. But if you ever buy a Genius game, they also have, there's 2 books in there. There's a how to play the game, and then there's why we made it the way we did. And their games are obviously going to be a game first, but they're pretty scientifically accurate in many ways.
Yeah.
They do a great job. This is one of the lesser known ones, I think, because the game is a lighter game than the other ones.
Right.
But I enjoy it. So it's a lot of fun.
I mean, they are, if there's one publisher we needed to mention on this list,
Genius Games.
it's Genius
There
Games.
would be 2, actually. The other one is the one I just mentioned. Academy Games. Academy and
Games.
Genius.
Yes.
Genius Games, yes.
Right.
Academy for History, Genius for Math, Science. For Math, let's go to number 4.
Ooh.
All right, my number 4 is a big old cheat because we're talking about the classroom, right? There's a lot of cheating that goes on in classrooms.
Okay.
Not in my class.
It's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle. And that's because I wanted to use basically the same game system for 2 separate subjects. Let's see if you can guess a little bit.
I will allow this because I have a number
what
very
it is,
similar.
don't you?
No, I have a number similar later on.
So I have a game that's essentially the same game. One would be for science and one would be for social studies.
One is for science, one is for social
Right,
studies.
and it's essentially the same game with 2 different names, 2 different themes, but it's the same.
Oh, this is probably higher on my list, so just go ahead.
Oh, okay. My number 4 is either Fauna or America.
Never mind.
No, huh?
But actually, Fauna is one I considered.
Yeah.
I didn't pick it because I think it's harder to find in print at this point in time.
Okay. Yeah, that may be true. Sorry, I did not take that into account for this list.
No, and that's the only reason I cut off. I'm not saying there's a lot of good.
Right. So this is a game where basically it's It's good because not only does it, kind of teach you, fauna, mostly about animals and the types of animals, and so it would be good for a science class and things along those lines. America would be good for facts about, U.S. history and things along those lines. But in a big group setting, you can play a game like this and you don't have to know the exact answer. So it kind of, there's a thing about calling people up and putting them on the spot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so this kind of alleviates a little bit of that. But it also lets the whole class learn. So I think to me that's a big thing, is that you're not necessarily calling one person out in front of everybody else and say, do you know this or not?
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to do that, but other times it's more about what can we learn as a group, right? How can we collectively learn about this? And I think both of these games do that well, and it could work in a larger group setting also. I mean, I think the player count is lower, but I think you can adapt this easily to a larger group setting.
Yeah, just group people up.
Yeah, and so
this
these
is a
are
good
both Freedom and Freeze games, and one could work well for science, and one could work well for
When we did
social
this
studies.
list in 2018, fauna was on my list.
Okay, all right.
All right, what are we at? 4. Number 4 for me is Trekking the World.
Oh,
Trekking the World is actually a very recent game, relatively speaking. And this one gets on the list for a couple of reasons. It's very much obviously about geography, traveling the world, seeing different places. But the main reason is because on the backs of all of these large format cards that talk about the Great Barrier Reef and Mount Fuji and all of these places, they tell you about that place.
they do, yeah.
So it comes sort of pre-built with a little history, a little discussion of the importance of the place or the thing you're looking at or discussing. And I really like that. I think the game does something which is educational, yet stays out of the way if you are uninterested in pursuing that in a play session.
Right.
And I think it's a really sharp way to be educational. I don't know if Genius Games does this sometimes. It sounds like they do. This idea of like the book that you can use to use it in the classroom or
Well,
to
they
learn
use
more
actual
about it.
terms for stuff. I'm like, kids are going to go, what does that mean? Oh, well, that's what we're talking about. This
Yeah. But these guys have done a nice job of discussing the location, and again, jumping off point to then discussing Chichen Itza. You know what I mean?
Right.
Be like, okay, well, let's find out about it. Where is it in the world? What happened there? Who lived there? That sort of thing. When? So yeah, this is a nice one. Very gorgeous. Very varied, There's a lot of different places they discuss all over the world.
They do.
From all over history, And it's sort of an all-encompassing travel through both history and locations. So my number 4, Trekking the World.
My number 4, I lied. It's another Genius game. This is the last one, though. Again, this is not one I think a lot of people would pick, but I'm picking the ones I like. And this is Periodic, a game of elements. So this game is based on the periodic table. It's actually not the only game based on the periodic table.
Yeah.
There's at least one other, and then there's several bad ones.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, I bet.
All right.
But this one I like a lot. Now, the game itself is kind of a silly game in which you are trying to accomplish goals by moving your piece around this table, but you're using different ways to move on the table, which requires you, if you play this often enough, you will learn the periodic table.
Right.
It's colorful, it's bright, it's fun. The periodic table already looks like a board game.
It does.
To some degree, right?
Yeah,
you look at it, you're like, what is all that? This game does it. And as with Genius Games, it also adds the book of stuff. But this one also teaches logic and path building because you want to be able to do things quicker than other people. It's a race game.
Okay.
You're trying to you got to go to this checkpoint, then this checkpoint, then this checkpoint on the periodic table. I like it. It works really well. So that's my number 4.
All right.
All right, my number 3 is a little card game that I think works fantastically in a social studies classroom. It could not be simpler, and it tells you exactly what it is right away. This is Timeline. So this is just a game. I mean, this is the one game that I think people, I can't even get my thought out here. It's so clearly educational, but it doesn't seem to bother people, right? Like this, you know what I'm saying?
And it's the thing that people hate the most in history.
Right.
Like, what do you hate the most? Dates.
Dates. Right, but
know.
there's something about this that it never.
I think people hate the specificity of dates.
Right, and so
You know
here
what I
what
mean?
you're
Like
trying to
fauna,
do, right?
being close counts in something like American fauna.
Yes.
People don't mind that.
Right.
You know, this idea of like, where's this animal from? I'm like, ooh, here-ish?
Yes.
The ish part is fun. If you're
Right.
like, where exactly is this animal
Yes.
from? I'm like, I don't know. Come on.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right, and so you can see, like right here, where basically the idea is you've got things that are already out there that have dates on them, and you are trying to place something that you don't know the date somewhere on that timeline and find out if you are correct or not by flipping it over. It's, I mean, this is just, I think, perfect for a history class.
Yeah.
And again, you could certainly play this in a large group. So yeah, this was one of the first games that came to my mind when we talked about doing this list was Timeline. It's just it almost writes itself, so to speak.
All right.
Not my timeline.
No?
All right, my number 3 here, and in fact, my 3, 2, and 1 at this point, guys, are all crossovers.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
I will go fairly quickly through these then. My number 3 is one that Mike mentioned not too long ago. My number 3 is fauna.
Wow, okay.
Again,
All right.
geography, animals, being close to their weight, where they live, their tail length, and whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Lots to dig into. Very nicely made, good discussion piece. So, my number 3.
Brilliant choice, Zee.
Thank you.
Brilliant choice.
This guy gets it.
Those are my list last time. All right, my number 3 is a game that sounds like it's making some sort of statement, and it's not. It's called Banned Words.
Okay.
Which sounds like, controversies over what's allowed or not.
Right,
That's not what this is. This is a party game
Okay.
in which you get a bunch of clues, some words that you're trying to so I'm trying to get you guys to guess these words.
Okay.
The opposing team, you split into 2 teams, they know what the words I'm trying to get you to guess are, so they're going to write down a bunch of clue words that they think I'm going to say.
Okay.
And I don't know what those clue words are, but I'm trying to give you guys clues. Maybe the word is, merry-go-round, so they're definitely going to write horses. So I'm like, they probably write horses.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of another way to describe a merry-go-round without using words. And this increases your vocabulary because you're trying to think of other ways to say things.
So it's similar to like a just one thing, right?
Kind of.
A little.
So if he says, like, circular horses, and the other team goes, horses, we have it.
Yep, they write it down.
And then they get a point for that.
Okay.
So it's more like lateral thinking, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
It's closest to
and you might
taboo.
get to say the word donkey.
But in Taboo, there's the 5 words, and you play Taboo and you get it. You're like, oh, I can get these clues without saying this word.
Right.
Because they forgot this one really easy word. But the other team, you're like, I think they said it, even if they didn't.
Yeah, you outthink
You're the
yourself.
person giving clues is like, and they're trying to think of and that's good because we should learn to say things in different ways.
100%.
In multiple ways, in various ways.
In multitudes.
I run
of
out of
ways.
synonyms. Moving on.
You know the word synonym. That's good.
Synonym roll. Okay, I said it while we were at the break, so you didn't hear it. My number 2 is a crossover. It's a crossover with Tom.
What's going on? What am I? Chopped liver? What's going on?
And probably the people. This is Freedom, the Underground Railroad. And so this is, it's so hard to tackle this topic, to gamify this topic, right?
Yes,
because that's the
right.
whole thing, is when you gamify something, there are certain implications that can go with that. This, I think, does it remarkably well, where it keeps the gravitas of the topic. It's also a really good cooperative game.
Right. Yeah.
Like, just no 2 ways about it. It's a really good game, but you feel
It's a struggle.
You
the
really,
game is a struggle, which is in line with the theme. Yeah.
You absolutely feel that weight, I think.
Yeah.
And I also added this extra picture because through Academy Games, they actually have lesson plans built around this game.
Yeah.
So you can incorporate those if you wanted to have some pre-built lesson plans around this game, which is not a bad idea because, again, this is not an easy topic. You're obviously going to cover it in a history class,
right.
But when you gamify it, you have to be really careful how you do it. And I think they did a stellar job with it. So yeah, you talked about it. I won't belabor it more than I
Not
already
only
have.
did Tom talk about it, Mike, you talked about it.
I talked about it.
This is my number 2 as well.
Oh!
Double crossover!
So everything Mike said, including, if I may, the word gravitas. I'm taking that one. I'm going to borrow it. I'm going to put it in my vocabulary. Gravitas.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you guys said already. I'm not going to belabor the point. This is a fantastic game, full stop, and a fantastic game for this topic that we're discussing today.
My number 2 is a crossover with Mike. And this is also the first game I thought of when I made this list. Maybe Freedom and this one, and that's Timeline.
Yeah.
Or, just as a heads up, there's another game called Cardline.
Yes.
Which is very similar. So, Mike did mention the game is played essentially where you have some cards and you don't know what's on the other side.
Right.
And you're sticking them into the line and it needs to be in the right spot. Then you flip it over. So it needs to be between 2 dates. Or with Cardline, it might be some other scientific fact. You might have animals and the length of their tails you might be doing or something like that. That's such a simple premise.
It really is.
What's really cool about Timeline is it's a very small game, and they all can be mixed.
Yes.
So there's inventions, there's movies, there's historical events, there's specific to countries. There's a U.S. one, there's a Great Britain one.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then you can just mix them up and play them together, and it works really well.
It does.
It also can be taught in about 30 seconds. Anybody can play it.
Yes.
It takes a very short amount of time. It's fantastic.
Works in big groups. Yeah, it's great.
So Timeline, look at all those timelines.
Look at that.
So many.
And they're cheap.
Yes. I don't know what your number 1 is. I'm going to guess it's a science game.
Is
It
it
is
a
a science
crossover?
game. It's not a crossover.
Does it have to do with beans?
It well, it depends on what you can. It has to do with legumes.
Whatever. They all make me fart.
Lemmings?
Legumes.
I know.
Yeah, this is Genius Games. We've been talking about them. Perfect one.
I don't know their game, so I don't know which one this is.
This is Genotype.
Genotype is
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that. Okay.
So
newest one.
Mendelian genetics, and so this is one that again we could have picked different. You picked already a couple. We could have also talked about cellulose and some other ones, but this one I picked because this was the one that I felt did just a stellar job of incorporating fun gameplay with some actual scientific background. And how do we know this? Because like you said, they come up with books that are.
That was planned.
Not just their rule book, the science behind genotype. And they have these for all their games, right? And so basically it goes through this. George Mendel and the setting of genotype, the study of pea plants. And it shows you in this one even, I don't know if it does for the other ones, I haven't looked through all of them, but even how the science plays in with the mechanics of the game, which is really cool. It's very, very, there's obviously a lot of thought put behind this, but they never seem to forget the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And that's, I don't think there's any kid that likes games of any type that wouldn't be interested in playing this, at least of the appropriate age level, even if they don't care about the subject, right? It's a fun game, and you're going to learn something almost even despite yourself, which is what we have to do as teachers all the time.
Yes.
Right.
So,
the education, you sneak in the educational
right,
stuff.
yeah, because if they know you're hitting them with it, they're going to probably be a little bit, resistant to it. So, yeah. Genius Games do a great job. Genotype's the one I just happened to pick.
That's your number 1. What is your number 1? Is it a crossover? Well, you already said that. Is it a crossover with me? And Mike? Okay.
My number 1 is Timeline.
There we go.
Timeline is kind of the obvious pick, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
It is the one that encompasses so many topics. There's so much going on that you can incorporate into it. Like you said, you can use any theme that's been out there. You can make up your own cards. You could do this in class with your own ideas, right?
100%.
Ooh, yeah.
You could do your own date, your own whatever, So, for example, right?
Oh.
When was the shoe invented?
Oh, I thought you were going to bring out.
So you put this in the timeline,
Okay.
I got
and
nothing.
then you have to just had to
The
one
shoe
up.
or the hat? Which
I have to
one
try
was
to
done
one up
first?
Mike there.
That's right.
Pulling out visual aids. What's going on?
Shoes were first, but I don't know.
I don't know. Hats,
Someone look
shoes,
it up. Shoes are first. Which hats? Which
Shoes
came
or
out
hats?
first?
Shoes or hats?
which were first invented, yes.
I don't think we can go back far enough to know.
What's a job first, cobbler or haberdasher?
Ooh, probably cobbler because you can
I
get
got-
it out without a hat.
Everybody's their own cobbler first.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
We'll go back enough. Anyway, timeline, like I said. An obvious pick, perhaps, but that doesn't mean it's a bad pick. It's just
No.
because this one's a very obviously educational game. Mm-hmm. This is a popular game.
Yes.
Very popular. It's sold tons, and they've made so many because it's a good game.
Right.
first,
Yep.
It just happens to also be a great educational tool.
Yeah.
Number 1.
Good choice.
My number 1 is a series, nay, a genre that I'm upset didn't exist when I taught, because I would have 100% used it. And that is... Huh?
10 Days?
No, 10 Days is a good series. No, it is escape room games, and I'm going to say specifically the Unlock series, because you can reuse them.
Huh.
Wow.
I would have loved to have had this when I taught,
never
because
even
I would have given these
Hold on,
to
let me put my
kids.
shoe back on. That's amazing.
I would have given these to my kids and said, here's a group, and Unlock, you don't ruin anything.
Right.
Exit games and other ones. But even those are tempting because you're cutting things up. I might have tried to build my own.
Yeah.
But Unlock, it uses so many different skills, observation, and the kids would be like, we can use an electronic device in the classroom. I'd be like, yes, you can.
Sucker! By the way, the comments are blowing up right now.
Oh, my goodness.
With hats v. shoes.
Looks like hats
Shoes are older.
Shoes are older,
For
yes.
300 years, there were no hats.
Look.
What was going on?
I wish somebody would come up with a shoe for my head.
That's right. You wore palm fronds over your head is what you would do.
All right, anyway, back to escape room games. I think they're great. The problem with escape room games, it would be expensive for you to buy them, which is
Yes.
why, that the ones that are disposable.
Yes.
So that's why I say Unlock. And when you get Unlock, nowadays you get 3 of them in there.
Sure.
So that's enough to cover, say, 12 kids.
Right.
Maybe if you put 4 per table, and you could probably put 5 per table, right?
You probably could, yeah.
And they would sit around and talk about it. There's a clue system, a hint system. Ah, man, they're really good. And I play this with my kids. I feel like they're learning leaps in logic and deduction and skills and communication. Sometimes there's scientific math and stuff is involved with them to
How
some
long do
degree.
they typically take to do?
90 minutes.
No. I mean, they're usually timed at an hour once you go
Okay.
over an hour.
Yeah.
And every time you press the button, you lose 2 minutes. So they're usually less than an hour.
Okay, yeah.
To win or to just
Oh, to win. Right.
It might take you a while. It might take you 90 minutes, but you can definitely time it to be done.
Right.
Yeah, you could split it over 2 days,
You
too.
could,
and all.
or if you had a block schedule, it would work for that, for
Yes,
sure.
it does.
Okay.
Absolutely. For a block schedule, you can definitely
But
do
I
it.
really love this. I just.
It's a very interesting, this is an outside-the-box choice, Tom.
Yeah, I was not expecting it, I'll tell you.
It just. I thought, man, I would love to have had these.
You've earned that hat today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I wasn't born in 3400 BC.
You wouldn't have had a hat.
For many
You would
reasons.
have had to put a shoe on
wouldn't
your
have-
head.
Like, I want to do reviews. I'm like, get back out in the field. Yeah, okay.
You're a gatherer, not a reviewer.
That's right.
Okay. Let's take a look at the People's Choice here,
right.
top 10. So if you want to vote in these, you can always go to our website and just click on vote for the top 10. You can start voting right now on the next top 10 that we do together. So let's take a look here.
What do we got?
Number 10 here, we got periodic.
Okay.
So that matched me 9 pandemic.
Interesting.
Sure.
All right, so I don't feel bad about CO2 after number 8 up here.
8 is Twilight Struggle. Yes, Twilight Struggle's slightly easier than CO2, but not much.
But it's also only a 2-player game, which makes it a little bit
You
tough
can
in a
do
classroom.
teams, but it does teach the Cold War really well.
Sure, yes, 100%.
Yes.
7 is Photosynthesis, a nice abstract game, but that does have a lot of
Yeah, I
facts
can
about
see that.
photosynthesis in it.
You'd have to do a little bit of the
That one you need to
supplement.
extrapolate a
You need
lot.
to supplement it, yeah.
I said the word extrapolate.
You did. That's
You don't
better.
get any bonus
Thank you.
points.
Okay.
Number 6, Genotype. Number 5, Just One. That's a good word game
Sure,
for the
I can
class.
see that, yeah.
Yeah.
4, Cytosis. This is about blood cells. It's a worker placement game. Very well done.
Yeah, another genius game.
3, Codenames.
Yeah. No, I
2,
get it.
Freedom the Underground Railroad. And number 1, Wingspan.
We cross over with the people on the same number,
Yes.
I should mention.
Yeah, that's
At number
true.
2.
Wingspan has a lot of facts about
It's
birds.
an interesting choice. So I
You
think
put Endangered on the list.
I did. No, I'm not arguing. I'm surprised it's number 1, to be honest.
It's number 1 because it's Wingspan.
That's true.
Because it's that popular,
it
you
is
know,
that
but
popular,
it's
and
definitely not a bad pick for
It's
a
not.
game that has educational elements in it. It's
Yeah.
very well researched.
It is, and
Very
and,
well illustrated. I mean,
Right.
they have
and
a
they
lot
do
of...
have factual elements
Yeah.
on the cards, and just the idea that the larger birds can be the predatory birds. And yeah, it's an interesting idea. I don't know that it wasn't in my top 10, but
So, when this is its own video here, if you have your own games that you think are educational, mention them in the comments. It's good that I could talk about this subject all day. There's tons of these.
yes, and I saw some interesting ideas even thrown around in the live chat. Like someone even mentioned QE if you were going to use that in an econ
I just
class.
actually read an article about someone was using that in their classroom.
Yeah, it would be a
For
very
AP
interesting
economics.
AP econ, because I can
interesting,
tell you
yeah.
the econ teacher at the school I taught at used Monopoly, and I think QE is a much better choice
Yeah.
for
Absolutely.
econ.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, absolutely.
Let me say this before we head out here, okay? All three of us were formerly teachers. We all know what that's like.
Oh, boy.
We now have a job here where we're reviewing games, which is very fun and all. And part of the reason that we can do this is because we were teachers.
Yes.
But I want to say a huge thank you to teachers. Not on a personal level. You know, my kids from the whether homeschool or they're going to college, or teachers all across the board. But teachers in general, especially the last couple years, have been horrific for teachers. I cannot even imagine.
Horrendous.
Well, I can imagine it, which
Yes.
sounds terrible. So just from me to you, thank you. All right? When we joke about things sometimes, but I really have the highest respect for teachers because I was one, and I know what it's like. So I just want to say thank you from myself.
I'm
It is
proud.
a tough and often thankless job
Yeah.
that is nevertheless extremely important. So
and if
yes.
you're a parent, stop yelling at your teacher and start yelling at your kid.
Yeah, wow.
And tell your kid
Yeah.
to listen to the teacher.
I would co-sign that you don't want to have an adversarial relationship between a parent and a teacher. It happens far too often, and I'm proud that I was a teacher for all those years. Like, I really, it's something that I take as a point of pride. So
Yeah.
I really feel
Yeah.
like teachers are very important. Not that we're saying anything, I like
this
to
isn't
think that,
revolutionary
right.
information.
I like to think that teachers are much more appreciated than they are paid, and that would be nice to have that change. But otherwise,
All righty. Well, there you go. That's our top 10 games for the classroom. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Zee Garcia.
I'm Mike DiLisio.
Have fun learning.